the US government shutdown is continuing without any sign of a deal. But the administration has said that key US allies like Israel are going to continue to get their money. Of course, the US military or federal workers, well, good luck out there, guys. I'm Paul, US Army combat veteran. Let's talk about this wild one. Now, of course, before we do, you guys know Strike Gum, the veteran owned, made in the USA energy gum, owned by this veteran specifically, with all the caffeine of an energy drink, is having our 2-for-1 fall sale. So buy 2 of any pack of Strike Gum, tray, 5-pack, whatever, and get a 3rd pack free. You can't beat it. The link is in the description. Okay, so let's talk about this insanity. So first off, the White House is reversing its claim that it was going to fire government employees. This is something that, of course, Trump threatened to do. He said, I'm going to lay off all these government employees if you Democrats don't agree to my terms, if you don't capitulate. And now he said, oh, actually, one, it's not at all legal, right? The government employment is negotiated with unions. And these unions have said, listen, you can't just arbitrarily fire us. But not only that, but in a lot of cases, like the congressional funding is allocated in such a way that you can't just shutter an agency you don't like. Well, that's sort of how it used to be. I guess you can now, right? The Supreme Court says the president can do literally anything. But the White House, again, is already rolling back their claim, the president's claim. Actually, the president said that federal workers were already being fired amid the shutdown, which again is typical Donald Trump, not really actually understanding the terms of anything. But as the government shutdown again enters its 6th day, there's no sign of really breaking. But the administration said, as we talked about last week, that they're actually going to fire, not just furlough, the 750,000 federal workers affected by the shutdown. He suggested on Sunday that the layoffs were, quote, taking place right now, and said it was totally Democrats' fault, despite him being the one firing these people. But of course, his press secretary, who has repeatedly been shown to be willing to lie to him, or lie for him, said that there were hundreds of thousands of federal workers who had been furloughed but not fired. Right? She added the OMB is continuing to work with agencies who, unfortunately, are going to have to be laid off in this shutdown. So it sounds very confusing, but fundamentally, the president came out and, as we talked about, said, hey, I might have to fire all these federal employees. Now, to be clear, the law is pretty clear on this. He does not have to fire federal employees because there's a government shutdown. What they are is called furloughed, which says, hey, you are still a government employee, you have a valid clearance, but you cannot perform work for pay, right? You cannot you will not be drawing a salary until your pay is funded, and you can't do any work. You can't perform any operations for the government because the government cannot ask you as a Fed to work for free unless you're providing an essential service. So, and this is where things get even more fucking wackadoo, because but the rule is that these federal employees, they are perfectly allowed. They will get their back pay, and they're still employed by the government, so they're not unemployed, right? And they can't seek other employment because they're still subject to federal restrictions. For example, again, do you really want someone from the FAA working for Boeing while at the FAA? No, of course not. Well, those restrictions exist for most federal employees. And so they, just as a rule, say, listen, you have to get prior approval if you want to have outside employment. Fun story. I actually had to get that approval when my YouTube channel started taking off. And I had to literally go to my bosses and say, hey, I have to fill out this form because my YouTube channel is now making too much money. And I have to be like, yo, this is a thing. And thankfully I got my start doing video game reactions. So I was able to be like, hey, this isn't related to my job because I'm talking about Warhammer. Space Marines are really big. But my agency was like, okay, fill out this giant form. We're going to do a review of the employment you're talking about, and we'll give you a thumbs up or thumbs down on whether you can do it. And they said, yeah, of course, that's not a problem. But the key is I was doing that while still a Fed, while drawing a salary. imagine if I was furloughed and not able to draw my salary. Well, your rent is still due. And so for a lot of federal employees, they're really screwed. And so this is a really tough spot. But what's even worse is in the next 7 days or so, you're going to actually start seeing missed paychecks, right? So everyone got paid the 1st, and everyone should be getting paid the 15th. But you know who else is a federal employee that we need to acknowledge here? It's the U.S. military. And the U.S. military, Trump says, listen, Trump told sailors, don't worry about paychecks as shutdown continues. Now, as you know, being told by President Trump not to worry about the pay, the check's totally in the mail, bro. He screwed contractors a lot. You should absolutely be worried about your pay if you're a sailor. Now, he said the pay is totally coming, but the troops will miss a paycheck if Congress doesn't agree to a deal to reopen the government before paychecks are processed on the 15th, right? A legislative effort to provide military pay despite a shutdown has languished without a vote because Mike Johnson, of course, can't bring the House back into session because that would mean he has to seat the newly elected representative, and that would trigger the release of the Epstein files. Yikes. So, again, it's simply easier to just have America's service members go without pay. Trump said, we'll totally get you guys every last penny. Don't worry about it. Now, to be clear, President Trump has not made the same promise to the federal employees, which, bear in mind, guys, remember, we say, oh, federal bureaucrats. But like, you know who is a federal bureaucrat? The FBI. In fact, the FBI is full of federal bureaucrats. Oh man, the DEA, the ATF, Social Security. They're all full of federal bureaucrats. The VA. Right now, everyone at my VA office is working without pay. And I'm not even permitted. I couldn't tip them if I wanted. So this is like pretty bad. But what's kind of even worse is that the Trump has come out and said, listen, we're not going to pay these feds, right? We're just not planning on back paying them. There's no guarantee. Now, the law says that, yeah, Trump has to back pay the federal employees. But again, he controls the House and he controls the Senate. He could absolutely say, nah, we're just not going to pay you guys. And that is, again, tantamount to being fired. But like, I don't know what to tell you. If I have to sell you that like the federal government does some important functions and you want those people to be paid, like, I don't know what to tell you. Even if you are the most pro-MAGA guy, remember, you know who else isn't getting paid? ICE and Border Patrol. Those guys are going to go without a paycheck. Like, how long do you think they're just going to be out there, like, beating up protesters not at the border? Like, they just do it for the love of the game, you know? Like, they got rent too. So, again, this is like quickly becoming a disaster, and a disaster somewhat of the president's own making, given that the Democratic stance isn't even addressing some of his most controversial or corrupt actions. It's solely about Medicare and Medicaid. I'm actually surprised they're keeping it so narrow in terms of their focus. They just want to make sure that, again, the poorest strata of Americans, I think it's something like the poorest, like 10 to 20% of Medicaid recipients, have a chance to afford Medicare and Medicaid and some of the ACA subsidies, right? Have a chance to buy health insurance, right? I mean, in America, if you don't have health insurance, you die. You got to pay cash for everything. And a lot of doctors won't even touch you if you're cash pay. So, like, you know, we're talking about saving the lives of Americans. Like, definitely some Americans are going to die because of these cuts. Like, I'm surprised the Democrats are unable to, like, articulate that. But, like, somebody whose insurance would have paid for cancer screening, if they lose their insurance, they're going to miss a cancer and they're going to die. Statistically, that is like a fact. Somebody who is supposed to get diagnosed with diabetes isn't going to get that diagnosis or isn't going to be able to afford their insulin, and they are going to try to play some stupid game and they're going to die. Like, it's going to happen. It's a statistical fact. So all of this is like pretty life or death stuff, right? This is some pretty like lives of Americans are at stake here, you know? And again, you're talking about the FBI. Like, do you think the FBI like keeps us safe? Like, yeah, most FBI agents aren't doing political hit jobs on their retired directors. Like, most FBI agents are out here taking like kiddie porn makers off the street, you know? They're taking drug runners off the street. And this, like, I don't know. I want them to get paid, dude. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you know? And remember, there's the FBI agent, but he's supported, or they're supported by like 3 or 4 investigative assistants. They're supported by an HR apparatus. They're supported by security officers. And like, it's a huge agency. Technical people, forensics. They're all not working right now. They're all not doing anything. But you know who is going to get hooked up? You know who's definitely not going to lose their money? That's right, lads. The state of Israel. The government has confirmed, guys, that our greatest ally is going to continue to get their billions. In fact, everything that has to do with the interests of Israel is absolutely being hooked up. And this is, again, I'm not like Mr. Israel bad, but the American government has an obligation to its citizens. Like, for example, one of the last legislative acts that the administration and the Republicans pushed through on a bipartisan basis, by the way, wasn't to make sure that key American programs that save American lives were funded. No. It was $230 million to Lebanon to make sure that they can continue to disarm and fight Hezbollah. So again, yesterday, a Democratic congressional aide told reporters on October 1st, just before the deadline, we were able to get through $230 million. Not a huge amount, but for a small country like Lebanon, that's really significant. So I want to point out that when the chips are down, when all bets are off, when Americans really need our elected representatives to stand up for us, they're making sure the Israelis are protected. Protect Israel first, and then work on everybody else, right? Good luck out there. Good luck out there, federal employees. Good luck out there, FBI. Good luck out there, federal healthcare workers. Good luck. Hope you're out there. By the way, you know who else is funded by these cuts? Like the federal, like detention system, federal penitentiaries. Yeah, those people also not working, also not getting paid. Like, do you think that's kind of bad? Do you think maybe we want a system that, like, I don't know, like, or like when people, when like that holds and detains criminals, like, I don't know, I want that system to work. Call me crazy. Huge thank you to guys like Yanko Georgiev, Bastian Himmler, Michael Fry, Christine Suman, Chris Holmes, Deborah Oppenheimer, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier members. I appreciate you. And hit subscribe. See ya. Okay.